Good afternoon, members. To all members of the Governance and Strategic Planning Committee, you are hereby summoned to attend the monthly meeting of this committee, which will be a hybrid meeting conducted remotely via WebEx and physically here in the Council Chamber, Tuesday, 7th of October at 4 o'clock. So, Chair, starting with the roll call, Alderman Cook.
Online, John.
Alderman Hussey.
Aye.
We have apologies from Alderman Wilkinson. Councillor Sandra Duffy is here. We have apologies from Councillor Farrell. Councillor Harkin. No, not as yet. Councillor Hart.
And Shaw here, Lena here.
Thank you. Councillor Jackson.
And Shaw.
Councillor Leonard.
Shaw.
Councillor McDade.
Here.
Councillor McGinley.
Shaw.
Councillor Mooney. Councillor Tierney.
Here, John.
And I think our chair, Councillor Neelis, can't be here in person, but maybe online. Is that right?
She will be joining us online. She's just on her way
Okay.
back.
Thank you. Thank you, members. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, John. Members, the next item on the agenda is the broadcasting statement. I would like to remind everyone physically present at this meeting or in attendance remotely that this meeting will be broadcast live to the internet and will be capable of repeated viewing. This broadcast may be terminated or suspended in accordance with our protocol. Due to your attendance at this meeting, you are consenting to being filmed and to the use and storage of those images for broadcasting or training purposes and for the purposes of keeping historical records and making those records available to the public. Members and approved speakers are reminded to only have their mics and cameras on while speaking at the meeting and to use the chat facility to request to speak. A copy of the council privacy notice may be found on the council website at derrystrabane.com. Thank you. Members, declarations of interest can be raised now or as they arise in the meeting. Councillor McGinley.
I don't know if I need to declare it, Chair. It's just that there's a reference within the report from our deputation to Shandolans, and I'm on the committee at Shandolans, so just for the interest of being.
Better to be shifting, sorry. Councillor Duffy.
Declaration of interest in terms of the presentation. Work for an organisation that is funded by the Housing Executive.
No worries. Members, those declarations of interest will be noted and any others that arise throughout the meeting can be declared then. Item number 5, members, is our deputation. And I'm delighted to welcome Grania Long, the Chief Executive of the Northern Ireland Housing Executive, and Eddie Doherty, the local area manager, to present the annual housing investment plan. And both our presenters will be well aware, there's 15 minutes for a presentation and then we'll take some questions and answers from the floor. So over to yourselves. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you as ever for the opportunity to present. And this is our Housing Investment Plan presentation, which I'm very pleased to be invited back to give once a year. I suppose if I start just by moving on to the second slide, just to say, as I would always do, a big thank you to all of you as elected members and to officers of council who work so well with us. We're the Strategic Housing Authority and you're the Planning Authority, and I think our partnership working together has yielded results, really practical results on the ground. I've been here all day. Myself and Eddie have been visiting a number of projects that we've been working on together, both in terms of improvements to our own stock, which is really important, commissioning of new build programmes and everything in between. So I'll go through some of that in my presentation and share. I will stick to the 15 minutes to give plenty of time for questions. So look, we are community planning partners, and I know we have there's a huge amount of areas where we work very collaboratively on, and we've set that out in this slide in terms of the work that we do locally and across the council area on community planning. So again, hugely grateful to the time that you all give with working with Eddie and our team locally. The 10-year breakdown, if I just move on to remind everyone, the total number of households in the council area is just over 60,000. And the 10-year breakdown split between owner occupation and the private rented sector and social housing we've set out in the slide. The Housing Executive itself, as a landlord, we manage 8,500 properties, homes across the council area. And I'll speak to you about some of the work that we're doing in terms of investing in our own stock. So as I would normally do, thank you, if you can move the slide on, I would normally just set out for you every year what we have spent in the previous year. So I'm very pleased to say that it has been a high spending year, 24-25 in this council area. And you can see on the chart just how significant that spend has been. So obviously the Housing Executive invests in through housing benefit in helping households locally to meet their housing costs. So it's a hugely important programme of work. You'll also see, and I'll go on to some of this shortly, the very high level of capital that we were able to invest locally in the new build programme for social housing. So 44.5 million is a record level of investment across the council area, and we're really, really pleased to be doing that. And that obviously means excellent partnerships. It means, first of all, being able to access the right land in the right places, obviously having really good partnerships with you as the planning authority and with housing associations as the delivery organisations, and of course those relationships with local communities that are so important in terms of getting homes developed. So very, very pleased to see that. You'll also see a really significant focus by the Housing Executive on temporary accommodation. And I spoke with, when we met last year, in relation to the work that we were undertaking across this council area, but certainly within the city, in particular within the city, in reducing down the numbers of people in hotels and bed and breakfast accommodation, and increasing our supply of single lets and flats essentially for temporary accommodation. So you'll see some of the progress we've been making there because of the level of spend at 6.8 million. And obviously the more new build social housing we can commission, over the next number of years, we will expect to see those numbers coming down in terms of the numbers living in temporary accommodation. And certainly we've seen good progress in terms of reducing down the length of time people are spending in temporary accommodation too. So, so we will very much continue our focus on that. In terms of the landlord, and sorry, I should have also mentioned the supporting people budget has stayed high, 9.6 million. And it's always worth mentioning, supporting people outside of Northern Ireland, supporting people doesn't exist as a programme in England, Scotland and Wales, and indeed in the Republic. So the fact that we still have a supporting people programme allows us to invest in support projects locally, and they are very local, delivered by our voluntary community sector partners, and including housing associations locally. And I've visited a number of them in the city over the years, and they do fantastic work. So that programme is really important that it's sustained. There was an increase to the programme this year in 24-25 from the department, from departmental funding. We were very pleased to see that. On the landlord side, you'll see from the chart, we've invested 15 million, just over 15 million in our properties. And again, that's really, really important work about keeping people safe, warm and dry in their homes. So I was in Waterloo area earlier on looking at some aluminium bungalows that we've given a really important level of refurbishment to. And that will have been funded through that programme and a number of other programmes locally. And so again, that's all about improving our stock, reducing fuel poverty, improving energy efficiency. But there's a really important economic impact, because obviously we do that in partnership with local contractors. So it was a local contractor who did that work, and obviously all of the supply chain that goes with it. Thank you. So if you move on to the new build programme. So very rare that I'm able to report to a council that in a particular council area we have exceeded in the last year both the new build targets for urban new build, but also for rural new build. And I think this might be the only council area this year where both sets of targets have been exceeded. So that's, again, really, really good for the local community, but also, again, shows the scale and the breadth of those partnerships locally. So 44.5 million was invested in new social housing. 348 of those homes were completed in year. And you can see a really healthy programme of 1,348 new social homes under construction at the end of March. And as I say, really pleased to see those meeting both urban and rural targets, and that's really quite unique and great to see. In terms of waiting list trends, and the reason why, and if we just move on to the next slide, the reason why we have to keep that level of programme going, and we certainly intend to, is the fact that the waiting list is at the level that it is. And I would focus our attention particularly on the levels of housing stress, which again have gone upwards. So again, we all know the numbers, and as I say, the importance of keeping our focus now on new build social housing. So if I just talk you through on the next slide what that means in terms of numbers. So we have a key part of the work of the Housing Executive is to undertake that housing need assessment, and that supports new build development across the council area. And we obviously are a statutory consultee in relation to planning applications. So the housing supply strategy that was published in December 2024, that's a critical document in driving new build supply. We have obviously within our 15-year housing market assessment, we make a projection for the number of homes that are needed over the next 15 years. And you can see what they are for this council area. And we've split them between homes for sale, intermediate housing and social housing. And as I say, you can see what that needs to be over a 15-year housing market assessment. If we go on to the next slide, and again, we can go into this in more detail, obviously, in our conversation questions afterwards. For the 2025-2028 social housing development programme, we have 1,800 new social housing units programmed. And as I say, you can see there the split between urban and rural. And as I said to you already, we exceeded both targets on the urban and rural side in the last 5-year period. So again, really, really pleased to see that. 144 additional starts, the vast majority of those being urban in urban areas. And then, but as I say, really, really good to see a healthy rural housing programme, and really quite unique too. So if I move on, just in the interest of time, to our projected spend for this year. So again, just to remind you, we don't include housing benefit in this slide, and we don't include the new build programme because we haven't spent it yet. So again, I suppose the main points to make is we are sustaining as a landlord the level of the stock investment in our own stock. So again, 15, actually a higher number, just under 16 million. And I'm delighted that today I was able to get to Craigan Heights to see what will be phase 1 of our largest refurbishment programme. And so this is the largest anywhere in Northern Ireland, where we will be undertaking really significant and really welcome refurbishment to 109 homes. So myself, Eddie, met with local contractor who's going on site. We've obviously had really important consultation meetings. I think there's another one coming up this week with local residents. It was really good to get out there and see some of the, I've been in the homes before already. And again, this is something that we're all really, really excited about. And I know the local community are very excited, and the contractor is very keen to get started. So really great to see that. So that programme of investment comes out of that spend locally. But as I say, Waterloo aluminium bungalows, we've also seen. And we also saw today in Pump Street a really important restoration programme where we've brought back 4 units, a very old building, 1800s, built in the 1800s, and has been in housing executive ownership, and we're bringing that back into use. It's been really, really carefully restored, and it'll be a beautiful accommodation for 4 households. So again, those are the types of investment we're able to make in the city and across the council. And it's always worth remembering that is tenants' rent. So, you know, that's our job as a landlord. We spend it carefully, we spend it meeting housing need, and delighted to do so. So our spend will remain high. So just 2 final slides, I suppose, you know, that's all, lots of that being very positive, but obviously in the bigger scheme of things, there remain some significant challenges. We continue to see a shortage of social and affordable housing. While we met our targets with associations in this council area last year, we need to keep our focus on that, and we certainly are not taking our eyes off that. We are continuing to see really significant demand for homeless services. And while we've certainly made a lot of progress, and the local team have done an incredible job in terms of reducing as much as possible placements in hotels and bringing forward temporary accommodation stock, we don't want people to be in temporary accommodation at all, but certainly where they are, we need that to be as suitable as possible and for the shortest possible period. So that remains our focus. We have, of course, and look, this is well known, the housing executive has longer term financial sustainability challenges. Our rents are relatively low, and lower rents means less investment in our stock. So we do need to be and remain very focused on the importance of the housing executive being able to borrow. And that request is with UK Treasury, and we look forward to seeing that coming forward. We did see a very important statement earlier this year by the Chancellor in the spending review document, where she did outline the importance of housing executive borrowing as part of wider fiscal framework negotiations. So I hope that will be brought forward very shortly afterwards. In terms of the last slide and some of the opportunities, I've mentioned a number of them actually. Really pleased to see, as I say, the level of investment that we can make locally, and what that means for local supply chains and the local economy. I suppose the final point I would make is we have had approval from the department for the ability of the housing executive to acquire 600 properties. Just to give you that assurance, that will be across all council areas. So we would certainly expect to see some of those acquisitions happening locally and in this council area. And just to give you that assurance, and that programme, we're stepping up that programme now over the next few months. So I look forward to, I hope, being able to report positive progress next year. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much, Gráinne, for that update. We'll go to the floor now for questions from members. And just before we do that, can I also just, Councillor O'Neill, your attendance has been recorded. Members? Councillor Harkin?
Thank you, Chair, for letting me in, and thank you, Gráinne and Eddie, for being here today. And there's lots in the report, and there's a lot of great work that the Housing Executive is doing, particularly to upgrade properties and to do what they can with the budget that we have to build more properties. And I want to thank the staff as well, because we know there's tremendous pressures that the staff are under at the Housing Executive. But given I've limited time, I want to start with your introduction in the document, Gráinne, because as you acknowledge, you say that there is substantial challenges, deep-rooted and a widening gap between new housing supply and demand. And then you go on to say that you welcome the statement of intent from the executive around building more houses. And that's what I want to take issue with, because I know that the executive has developed this housing supply strategy and that they say that they want to build more houses, but the reality is that just isn't matched when it comes to the funding, because the number of new starts that were completed over the in 2024, 25, as you say in the document, I believe it was 913 that were completed, and there was 813 that were started. And that compares, that's an increase from the year before, but the year before there was only 600 social houses built. And that's not a problem of the Housing Executive, because I know that you're willing to build more houses or see the building of more houses because you can't do it yourself. But that's an astonishingly low number to start with. And it seems to me, over the last year, we've seen even the paltry target that the Department for Communities had reduced on the basis of lack of funding. So that deep-seated problem of the widening gap between supply and demand is getting wider. So while the executive might say, we are serious about addressing this, the reality is right now, if you go to homes in Derry and you talk to people who can't get a house or who are trapped in temporary accommodation, they say the blame for their housing problems is with migrants. That is widespread, and it's completely unfair, because it's just not true. And then I've listened to a number of, one party in particular, regularly on television now, telling people that because of migrants, they can't get a house. And the executive, in a lot of ways, is responsible for the lack of house building. And some of the parties, I would say the DUP in particular, have bent over backwards to try and destroy the Housing Executive and stop social housing building. So I do think that there is, and I acknowledge the very good work, and I think the £250 investment into repairing and upgrading existing stock is very important, and that shows you the importance of a social housing provider rather than somebody that's just sucking profits out, and the 750 million that will be reinvested over the next 3 years. But the widening gap is, I think, our biggest challenge, because it's obviously having a huge impact on people who can't get into housing, but it also then is creating conditions where people feel it's okay to blame a particular group in society that bear no responsibility for that widening gap. So I suppose I'm challenging this idea that's in the document that the executive is serious, because the only way they can demonstrate seriousness is if the funding actually is transformative. And right now it isn't. It's actually being compounded year on year because the gap between the need and demand is getting wider every year. So look, if you're able to comment on that, I would be eager to hear it. But I think that this is the reality. And I'm sure you're well aware about who is getting scapegoated because it's been said at demonstrations or riots or pogroms, and it's said on TV interviews as well.
Thank you. So I suppose the good thing about housing is it's about people and it's about numbers. So certainly the numbers speak for themselves. And I think what's been really welcome about the housing supply strategy is the fact that it has taken on board, and we were a very important housing executive, obviously advises the department in putting the numbers together into the housing supply strategy. So what was very helpful to see was the fact that they have put a number. So the housing supply strategy has a number, a target for a cross 10-year target across 15 years. That's very welcome because, as I say, what gets measured gets done. So that's very welcome. We also very much welcome the fact that there is a very substantial and ambitious target on social housing. So again, the kind of about a third of that target being social housing. And I think from my point of view as a social housing landlord or public housing landlord, we will always make the strongest of case for social housing, for public housing. So we certainly welcome that. The housing executive bid for 2,000 homes for 2,000 starts last year. We were funded to commission 1,500. So we didn't receive what we needed and what we bid for. We bid for 2,000 again this year. And I'm on the record in saying that. And up to now, we have capital funding to commission around about 1,100. So we go into the next monitoring round making the strongest of cases. But I think those numbers speak for themselves. We are 900 short this year in terms of what our bid is. And the year's not over yet. And we're working very closely with housing associations to keep momentum going on the programme. And we, as I say, we will make the strongest of cases in relation to that bid. And we'll continue to do that.
Thank you, Grania, for that. I have a number. Do you want to come back on that? Very quickly, Councillor Harkin, I have a number of speakers.
Grania, I appreciate that, but for the next 3 years or up until the mandate is over for this executive, the goal was 5,800. We're never going to get anywhere near that. And that is not the housing executive's fault. That's just because there is no serious funding to meet that target. So this is the thing about saying 100,000 houses over a 10-year period, with a third of them being social housing, with no actual funding or no ring fence funding, and that's been demonstrated over the last couple of years. So this is not an attack on the housing executive. This is about the executive, the storm of the executive's commitment to actually seeing housing built.
Thank you, Councillor Harkin. I have a number of indicated speakers now, so I'm going to take them in batches to try and get through it. And the first is Councillor Minnie.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you to Eddie and Grania. It just seemed like a short time ago that you were down here last year, and we're probably going to be saying the same things. And unfortunately, we are going to be saying the same things. I think Councillor Harkin has started it off with what seems to be the impenetrable gap in people on the housing list and not enough houses being built. But we spoke on that last year, the year before, and I suppose Sean has spoken on it already. So it has been, the point's been made. And it's been made well, and I suppose I'm not going to dwell on it anymore. I've just got a couple of other things I want to ask, and I know Councillor Tierney wants us to move on quickly, so I'm not going to drag it out anyway. But I was just looking at it, the pack there, and it's just, one of the issues that has struck me is the affordable warrant scheme, and I was wondering, I can see this year on the pack it's 326 installations. But I was wondering how many are on the list at the moment and what would be the average weight for that particular scheme. And secondly, one of the other things that struck me was given that the length of time that families are spending in non-standard or emergency accommodation, as we all know, that's where a lot of people are spending time in temporary accommodation because of the lack of housing, and due to probably the disruption to their daily lives and the impacts that have on families. I was wondering, as the executive at the minute on their own back, are they conducting their own research into how that may be impacting on people's lives? Because obviously you have a situation where nobody wants this. It's an untenable sort of situation where families are put on the what's called non-standard accommodation. But it would probably be helpful for people like us and probably for yourselves and maybe others to see if there's any research going on about how that impact is having on families, because obviously it may prove useful information for down the line for when hopefully maybe we get more building for proper accommodation for people to move under. And my last point, I think, or maybe my second, my penultimate point is, last year in Derry, there was 18 houses sold and each average selling price was nearly 60k. Number one, I suppose my point would be is we can't really afford to be selling houses if we don't have houses to give. But on the back of that, and I suppose legislation allows the executive to sell houses, does the sale proceeds stay within this division, or are they sent back to Belfast and then distributed into the pot? Because if you're going to be raising average price of 60k, 18 houses sold, that would be about nearly about about £1 million or 1.2 million minus disbursements. Is that given back to the local executive in Derry, or does that go to Belfast? And my last point, and it's a parochial point, would be, is there an update on the triangle scheme as well? But thank you very much. Thank you, Chair, for letting me on there. Thank you, Grania and Eddie.
Thank you, Councillor Minnie. Councillor McGinley.
Mega Chair, and thank you to Eddie and Grania for coming on. It's good to see you back. My key point on this, and I'm delighted that you were in Craigan Heights today, is that this is going to be delivered. I think the people that live in those houses have waited a long time for this work to happen, and for it to be beginning at the end of this month is phenomenal for them. And I know they're looking forward to meeting with the contractors next week at the meeting that's planned for them. And I'm just grateful that we're finally at the stage of delivery, because it's something that has been hard pushed for. Just in terms of some of the comments around the budgeting, not to speak for anybody else, but it only highlights how the executive is running on a budget that's not fit for purpose, and how the budget that comes from Westminster does not serve us in any way. So in terms of delivery, in terms of housing, we need to be looking towards the future and different, in my opinion, constitutional arrangements. Very good.
Thank you, Councillor McGinley. Councillor Jackson.
Very good, Deputy Chair, and thanks to Grania and Eddie for coming along. And I suppose on the back of Councillor Money's point and Councillor McGinley's, the Craigan Heights scheme is really welcome, much needed. When we think of the conditions that the existing stock are currently in, and the challenges that tenants are facing, particularly in relation to fuel poverty, and dealing with poorly insulated homes. There's a real emphasis in that retrofitting piece, and making homes more sustainable and energy efficient. And the triangle scheme is one that jumps out. We've had schemes, we had plans, we've had discussions around it going on for many years. At the length of time that I've been in council and my predecessors, there's been promises of solutions, and we haven't seen them delivered on the ground. We're hopefully will see in the near future the benefits of such schemes at Craigan Heights. But we need to see that delivered, and particularly in relation to the triangle, it's getting ridiculous now in terms of the length of time that this scheme has been promised. There's I understand there's complexities in relation to it, but we need to overcome the barriers. We need to be thinking outside the box around how we can overcome the challenges. Grania, you at the start of your piece, you emphasised the need for collective working, partnership working. I think within our council area, and I trust we have a brilliant relationship with Eddie and his team. There's every confidence in the local team here to address the needs and recognise the huge pressures in housing. And we all understand the significant pressures that the local team are under, and the difficult circumstances you're working within. But it is really, really disappointing. And it goes against that partnership work. And when we see Like the report highlights the huge gap in terms of those that are in housing stress, the growing number of those that are in housing stress, and the number of allocations. It's fallen way short. We need to build more houses. We need to deliver more social homes. There's no other magic fix. That's the solution. And it is extremely disappointing, and it goes against the partnership work. And whenever we're sitting in this committee, or not this committee, in this council and the planning committee, where we've got social housing schemes coming along that are deliverable, and the housing executive are refusing to support them. We've seen in the last number of months areas where there's huge housing stress, massive need for housing, and the housing executive are refusing to support local schemes. And I think the example and the information we were fed, or we received from the housing executive, was that because these schemes happened to be 100 yards away from other housing developments, it's not within that defined housing area. That's and in terms of, we need to be thinking outside the box. We need, if we're going to address the housing crisis, if we're going to have a step change of delivery, and I just want to comment that there has been some very much needed successful schemes that are under construction, that have people living in them. And it has taken some of the pressure off the housing waiting lists, but it's not. As the figures that are presented today show, that it's nowhere near enough. So we need a real step change in relation to delivery. And whenever we've got the housing, the competent authority in relation to homelessness, telling us that these schemes can't be supported, it flies in the face, and it is extreme of that partnership approach, and it is disappointing, because I know from talking to housing officers that are working day in, day out on supporting people in this city, they know the pressures that in relation to homelessness in this city and district, but the organisation's response, the planning applications that are coming to this council, certainly don't reflect that. So I just wanted to highlight that it's our frustration when we see schemes, and we know that if these schemes are delivered, they're going to deliver much needed homes for people that are desperate for them. So it would be, I would encourage the housing executive to bear that in mind when we're responding to the housing or the planning applications for social housing within our council area. They recognise the tremendous need for housing and social housing within this district. Thanks, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Jackson, and to the other two speakers in that batch. I'm going to go back to Grania and Eddie and allow them to respond to that, and then we'll take another batch. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Chair. So in relation to the Affordable Warmth Scheme, yes, I mean, the Affordable Warmth Scheme is a hugely important programme, and it obviously allows us to invest in homes in the private sector. We made a bid for, I think, about £15 million worth of affordable warmth investment. Our return was about 7.5 million for this year. Now, we've had an increase recently through the most recent monitoring round. I will follow up through the chair just to give you local numbers for that. I have them to hand. I'm sure my team has given them to hand. I'm just not finding, if I do before the end of the meeting, I can share them with you. But certainly we certainly have more than enough applications in the system, both locally and across all 11 council areas, to more than meet that budget this year. So we are oversubscribed, and we'll be making decisions on how we prioritise in the coming months. But I'm very happy, if you're content, for me to follow up on the actual numbers in relation to that. On non-standard accommodation, and again, just to restate the point, it's really important that, just to reiterate, my own view and the view of colleagues across the housing executive is we will only place people in non-standard accommodation where there's no alternative. We have worked really, really hard to increase our portfolio of temporary accommodation, so single lets, own front door accommodation. We're actually up now at 6,000 units of temporary accommodation across all 11 council areas. I never ever thought I would be saying this as a landlord, that we now have 6,000 units of temporary accommodation. While we don't want to be placing anyone in temporary accommodation, it's far better that we have high quality own front door temporary accommodation for households in the right places. So we have spread our portfolio, for want of a better term, regionally, so that we have a better spread in every council area, so we're not moving people out of council areas. Again, the numbers speak for themselves. So that has, as a result, enabled us to reduce down the amount of non-standard placements, both in this council area and more broadly. And we've also had a decrease, I'm pleased to say, in the length of stay for families in non-standard. So we have key performance indicators, so targets that I set as chief executive, and those targets come to me every month, and I meet the team every month, and we go through them for every area, including the West area. So again, we keep a very, very close eye on that. In terms of the impact for families, I mean, we're very aware of that, and there has been a number of pieces of research over the years. Shelter have done quite a lot of research over the years. And I suppose it's that research that has informed our own internal target, where we will not place children in hotels unless there's no alternative, and we will do it for the shortest possible period. And we monitor that really, really closely. And Eddie and the team have worked incredibly hard and successfully to reduce down as much as we can. So we do this without a legal requirement to do it. It's the right thing to do. And so it's very important to us that we keep our focus on that. So as I say, the numbers here are some months they go up and some months they go down, but at the moment we have a better picture. In terms of the house sales scheme and those sales every month and every year from our own stock, the question you asked was essentially what happens to the capital receipt when we sell a property. Is that capital, does it stay in the council area, or where does it go? I'm sorry to tell you, it doesn't even stay with the housing executive. So when we sell our own stock, this is the first year in which the housing executive, that capital receipt goes back to the Department for Communities. So I know it's a source of frustration, certainly a source of frustration to myself personally as the chief executive, and the board of the housing executive, and I would also say, and myself, it is not our view that the house sales scheme should continue. It's, we're depleting a public good and a social housing stock. I would like to see it suspended or removed, and certainly in the interim, essentially not being able to retain our capital receipts means the landlord sells the stock but has less capital to invest in its own stock. So I suppose the answer to your question is it neither stays here nor does it stay with the organisation. In terms of an update on the triangle, so I mean, when I came into post, Eddie met me about 5 years ago, 4.5 years ago, and we spent a full day going around the city and the council area, and we looked at a number of areas where Eddie was really committed to making progress, and I spent quite a bit of time on a number of occasions, not just that day in the Waterside Triangle, and I know there's been really significant issues, both in terms of undertaking the works, not just from a design point of view, but also from a procurement point of view and in relation to leaseholders locally. So we've looked at that a number of times. I know certainly Eddie's team and our asset team have looked at, in the interim, some design solutions to undertake to mitigate some of the water ingress that I saw myself with my own eyes. And so I know that there are, and I'll probably come on to Eddie just to give an update on more recently some of those issues. So look, it's still very much in my in tray. It is not something that we're in any way walking away from, but I know certainly in the shorter term, we've found some design solutions to that. And I suppose on that day, we also went to Creggan Heights, and we saw, so we're ticking off the list where we're able to make progress. Eddie, I don't know if it's maybe worth you coming in just on the triangle now at this point.
Yeah, there's been significant work that has gone on from the local team. We're well aware over the number of years that there's been significant water ingress issues around the triangle, and finding technical solutions to that has been difficult. There's 52 properties in the triangle, and I think 15 are either owner occupied or leased. And the housing management solution has been difficult to deliver there, despite our best efforts, because we have a scheme that was ready to go, but unfortunately we couldn't go to procurement on it because we couldn't resolve some of the issues on site. We have been working locally whilst we're trying to find the outcome and the overall solution. And as a result, our local teams have spent quite a bit of money, and we, I believe, have now eradicated the ingress issues, the water ingress issues. And what is happening now is we're reconstituting the consultant again. And I believe there's a site meeting organised with the consultant around the end of October to see the impact of the work that we have done locally in terms of the getting rid of the water ingress issues, and what will a new scheme look like. So we're coming together with a new design solution, really, that will hopefully have a less impact on the 15 less lessees or the owner occupiers. Come October, we'll be able to brief exactly where we're at with that. But we're hoping to go forward with another procurement service after we get the consultant back on site to assess the work that has been done.
Thanks, Eddie. If I just go on to, just note your comments on, in relation to Gregan Heights, and likewise, really pleased to see that going ahead. Just on the issue of fuel poverty and energy efficiency and homes, I mean, we're all completely in agreement. I mean, you know, good housing keeps people safe and warm and dry and healthy, and that's what we do as housing professionals, and why we love our jobs. I suppose within that big investment programme that we have, which is, as I say, paid for by tenants through their rents, about 50 million of that will be spent, were spent last year and about the same again this year on energy efficiency schemes. So I actually think we have a really good story to tell, as in Northern Ireland, we have a really good story to tell in terms of investing in our homes and energy efficiency. And as I said, I've seen a number of schemes locally that we've delivered that are just fantastic and transformational. And those aluminium bungalows today, for example, we've got 16 schemes in the West area in terms of our planned 4-year cavity wall installation programme. So again, really good to see. Not all property types will support cavity wall installation replacement, so it depends on the type of property, but we have a number of low carbon schemes, low carbon heating schemes, 37 properties in Strabane, for example, in the low carbon heating pilot. So anywhere we can continue to run those schemes, we will continue to do that. So again, our teams, and again, just keep you briefed, our teams locally work very closely when we're putting our programme of works together. We work with Eddie and his team so that what our local, what our tenants need on the ground is fed forward into that programme, and they put the programme together, and then it's our procurement and our delivery teams that make it happen. And I suppose on that final point in relation to housing need, look, I completely take the point that that housing need in this council area is very obvious and acute. And the reason I know that is we crunch the numbers. There are numbers. So, you know, to say we are focused on housing need, absolutely, because that we have teams of people who measure it. We undertake site identification studies. We undertake latent demand tests where we go under below the numbers, I suppose, in some detail, and look at how we can, every possible opportunity we will take to support a scheme we will do. Okay, now I understand your frustration, and I hear that from councillors and from elected members from time to time where we have not supported a scheme. What I would always say to you is our place shaping team are always happy to sit with you and with colleagues if you disagree with our level of support for a scheme. But I suppose the only assurance I can give you is, rather than knowing the specifics, is, you know, our job is to identify housing need and take those numbers and use them to support schemes where we can. If we feel that a scheme can't be supported, it is either going to be because housing need doesn't exist, or, and if you're saying housing need does exist, there's already a programme of new build which we have already supported. So I would imagine it'll be one or both of those, or most likely the latter, I think, if there's demonstrable housing need. So look, very happy. I'm sure our team have met with you. If they haven't, I'm very happy to set that up. But you know, these are ongoing debates that we will have, and again, very happy to continue to have that discussion.
Councillor Chair, you want? If you can be
Very brief, and I appreciate that. And in relation to that point, it is the latter. What was referred to was that there was another scheme currently under construction. Yeah. What I'm saying is that the figures, and when we see the growing gap between those in housing stress and the number of allocations, show that we need to be thinking outside the box. We need to be recognising the importance and the major need for new housing schemes to be coming on stream. We can't afford to be waiting 4 or 5 years for another scheme to be completed before we can assess the numbers. We know that the figures stack up. We know that there's a huge need already. Just in relation to the triangle scheme, and it was remiss of me not to highlight the work and recognise the work that had been carried out last year to address the water ingress. But we have to recognise when we're talking about energy efficiencies, some of these homes have had water running down the walls for 15 years and more. Whatever insulation was in place has been destroyed, and that has led to damp conditions within the properties. The ingress issue has been addressed, but there's still serious concerns about the condition of the properties. And I look forward to getting an update at the end of October around the way forward. Thanks, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Jackson. Members, just so you are all aware, I have a list here of Councillors Leonard, McDade, Duffy, Inillis, Logue, and Alderman Hussey and Cook in that order. So I will get you, but you just have to bear with me. So Councillor Leonard, I wasn't sure, did you put your hand up? Councillor Leonard, go ahead.
Just very quickly, as a rural councillor, I'm very concerned with the lack of social housing in rural areas. I know you said at the beginning that you hit your target, but there's still a massive demand. But I'm looking forward to the new rural strategy. It talks here that the draft strategy will be written by September and published in December. How are you on that timeline? And also, how do you think the new rural strategy will help the situation in our council and district area from my habits?
Thank you, Councillor Leonard. Councillor McDade.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Grania and Eddie, for coming in. And I just wanted to add my thanks to the staff of the Housing Executive on the ground here as well, because they do work exceptionally hard, and I know that they're inundated, so I just wanted to put on record that as well. 2 points. I just wanted to pick up on what you said, Grania, about whenever the houses are sold and the capital receipt goes back to the Department of Communities. That's really worrying, because we know the Department of Communities hates us here and that we'll never see it now. So the fact that essentially we've depleted our stock by 10 houses, or no, 8, how many houses was it? 18. And he's getting £1 million and we'll never see it. So that's really, really worrying. But what will incentivise him to stop that scheme? I don't know what, but I don't like the sound of that. The other thing that I wanted to ask just about was, we've been contacted by a number of local developers who are keen to develop over 55 schemes. And what they're telling us is the Housing Executive feel there's not the need for it. But I suppose my question is that not a bit short-sighted? Because if there was, if we were able to support local developers to develop more over 55 schemes, would that not free up more family homes? So is it not a bit short-sighted to say that that's not something the Housing Executive could be supporting, whenever we know that we don't have enough houses here for our families? So just be interested in your opinion on that. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor McDade. Councillor Duffy.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Grania and Eddie, for coming in today. And I mean, I don't think I need to rehash the fact that we are in a housing crisis and we have growing waiting lists right across the board, with rising homelessness and increasing complex needs across that whole population. The housing investment plan as presented here does need to reflect the need on the ground and the local need, and I actually do think that there is so much contained within it, that there is something there that tries to address everything that all the issues that we have. It is really important that we do put a focus on house building, as everyone else has said. We need social and affordable homes to be a priority for us moving forward. I just wanted to put this on record that we put in a recent FOI in terms of the point system, because I always have concerns around the fact that here in Derry in particular, the number of points that are needed to get a home is always much more than any other area. So from the FOI that we put in, it is on average 200 points to get a home here in Derry, whereas if you look at Fermanagh, it's 130. It's a huge difference. It's a huge start difference for people here, and the impact that has on families and individuals who are sitting on a waiting list, that difference in points. So I just think that it needs to be put on the record as well. We do, I'm going to say at this point, I really do want to thank Eddie and his team for the work that they do within the local offices. I think it's really important that that is put on record as well. They're under absolutely immense pressure from the public, who are frustrated in terms of the length of the waiting list, the hoops that they perceive that they need to jump through to get points. So it's that whole pressurized system that people are working in. We know that the numbers who are working in the Waterloo office probably aren't enough to cover the need and the impact that is out there. So they are working under immense pressure, and I think the housing solutions teams need to be commended for the work that they do. And I also want to put on record my particular thanks to the temporary accommodation team. And there has been a lot of focus on the temporary accommodation team over recent times, and that has been very public in nature as well, which has added to the pressures that people feel in a job that is particularly pressurised, because you're dealing with really, really vulnerable people. But I have to put on record my thanks to them, because they have been very keen to work in partnership with us all. They have been very keen to be solution focused around what they can do and how we can all work together to try and address some of these needs. And I want to particularly say around Eddie. Eddie has had a massive vision around what he can do, and particularly around non-standard accommodation and how we can move that whole piece forward. And I think that, I mean, we do have Derry Dine up and running, our West Area High Support, whatever name that you're giving it at this point, but it's up and running, and it's up and running now 4 months, and that wouldn't have happened without Eddie behind it and making sure that it didn't fall off a table, and yourself, Grania, as well, grasping that and realising that it was something that could make a difference here in Derry. It's been up and running 4 months. There has been teething problems, but not for the individuals who are receiving the support. And we can see already the difference that that is making, and hopefully that is going to grow now over the next number of months until we get to the magic number of 40 before the end of this financial year, and we'll see where we take it after that. But I think that it is really important to put that on record, because it is the only additional beds that we have received locally in terms of that homeless piece, and I think that they are really needed here in this council area. I think around the impact of non-standard accommodation, I think if we want to hear about that impact, there are a lot of charities who are working here within the city who are dealing with people who are in non-standard accommodation, and we can tell our own tales around the impact of that. So if that is ever needed, that information is there. And finally, Grania, I'm going to speak from a work point of view. I work very closely with the supporting people teams as well, and we are really grateful for the focus that they have currently on the city and the need that is here within the city and district, and the work that they put in day and daily. And I think that that has to be commended, because we know that we have a homeless crisis. We know that some of the people that are presenting as homeless at the minute have increasingly complex needs. I've been working in homelessness for, I'm not going to say how long, but over 30 years. And I have noticed a huge change. And I also want to say, Eddie and myself were at a homeless and health conference yesterday here in the Guildhall. It was run by the University of Ulster Magee, and it was the allied health students, and it was really encouraging to see the passion and the curiosity from those students around trying to address the needs. And it was great to have Eddie there putting on record the work that is ongoing and how we can all work together in partnership, because health is housing at the end of the day. You're not going to have one without the other. If you don't have a roof over your head, your health is not going to be good. So thank you for that.
Thank you, Councillor Duffy. Grania, back to yourself if you want to try and tackle some of those questions, please.
Thank you very much. Yes. So our rural housing strategy, yes. So it's a hugely important strategy. I know it's something that our board is very passionate about, and a number of members around the board. So the strategy will replace the existing strategy. It will have a very strong focus, as you've said, on new build, as our previous strategy did. And look, from our point of view, we are now starting to see, having had the existing strategy, a number of areas where we are able to commission new build housing in rural areas at a scale that we haven't seen for a number of years. Now, I completely take the point, and again, this is where the numbers speak for themselves, that it is not yet where we need it to be. But one of the single biggest barriers for us in commissioning the new build programme, because we commission it, we don't build ourselves, but one of the single biggest barriers is the availability of land, but also having a housing association partner in that area. So sometimes we can find ourselves in a situation where land is available, but we don't have a housing association partner to actually to undertake the scheme. So I think over the last number of years, that rural strategy, that our current strategy has brought together by our place shaping teams, our place shapers, our planners in councils, so this council included, and local housing associations, and then we bring the capital. So it is a partnership, and we've begun, I think, to see real progress. I'm hoping that the next strategy, and you're right, it will come forward in the next few months, where we'll add to that will be better use of surplus public land. So there are rural areas where there is public sector land, and I would like to see that being used. So I think you'll see more reference to public land in that strategy, and happy to take your view on that when the consultation commences. The point about over 55 schemes, I mean, certainly there's certainly no policy within the Housing Executive against over 55 schemes, quite the opposite. And in fact, we've been focused very heavily on, in the housing supply strategy, how we bring forward more over 55 schemes. So I'm very happy for our team to follow up with your office just to understand a little bit more about that, because it might be a specific issue, but certainly can give you assurance there's absolutely no policy there. We need as much over 55s housing as we possibly can. I'm just thank you for your compliments in relation to the team, and I know how lucky I am, by the way, locally, because you know what makes, I think, the Housing Executive a really unique organisation is it is huge, and it's a very large organisation, but it's an extremely local organisation, and that's really important. And I think housing, when you do housing, you have to do it as local as possible. So I always say my job is to get as much resource to our local teams and just keep getting the resource to them and let them get on with it. So our Housing Solutions team are just an outstanding team. They are, you know, the frontline team, and they, you know, and so we've spent a lot of time in the last number of years trying to get as much resource to that team as possible. It is, you know, it is a team that is still carrying some vacancies, and that's for a number of reasons. Some of it funding related, some of it less so now, but some of it just due to how difficult it is to recruit the right kinds of people. But we're in a much better place than we had been, and I have to say they are outstanding colleagues to have, and a team I'm very proud of. In terms of temporary accommodation and non-standard, I think you've all said it, we've made huge progress. And when we were here 2 years ago, I think, for the HIP, you know, we talked openly about some of the challenges that we had in a concentration of non-standard hotels, and we've moved very far away from that. I was just looking at the numbers when you were speaking to me. So we have increased our single let portfolio in the Rest area really significantly, and that's been really important to do that. So that's great. And obviously then, what we probably all still refer to as Dairy Time colloquially, but is the West Area High Support Service. Just thrilled to see that, and thrilled to see it off the ground, working well, and as I say, with that focus on the target of 40. So it's probably, I think it's the only area where there's been additional capital invested, supporting people capital invested, and it's just great to see. So thank you for that.
Thank you, Gráinne. Members, just to make you aware, Alderman Kerrigan has declared an interest as a member of the Northern Ireland Housing Council. If that could be noted, Paula, please. And we'll go to Councillor Neelis, please.
Garmagat and Garmagat, Councillor Tierney, for covering the chair for me today. I just want to come in on the strategic priority number 3, and I really commend. I'm delighted to see this as part of your strategy going forward, and the investment back into the local community and into the economy, with the 3 priorities being community wealth building, social value, and employability and apprenticeships. The report, the social enterprise strategy report, I would love to get actual sight on that to see some more of those details. I thought it was really positive to see the social return on investment achieving £5 and 3p for every £1 spent. And some really positive outputs on there. It's the other thing about the social value is the unmeasured outcomes. It's really hard to measure some of those outcomes, but we see them here in the community. And as a member of the Community Wealth Building Hub myself, I do see a member from the housing executive who comes to the meetings and always talks to us about how they can do certain contracts under 50,000. They can put them out to community organisations, and so there is a lot. You're talking about like people working on the ground and working locally, but there's a lot more going back into the local community than maybe what people see from the housing executive. So I just wanted to commend that. And I've noticed that the consultation is open. I'm just wondering, what's the closing date for that? And just to encourage as many community organisations to get involved with that consultation as possible. Garmagad.
Thank you, Councillor Annelis. Councillor Logue?
Sorry, thank you, Chair, for letting me in, and thank you to Grania and Eddie for coming to Council to present this report today. I suppose without saying that the team we have here in the Northwest is just absolutely fabulous. Meeting Eddie, myself on Friday morning to go over a few local issues, but we do have great gratitude for the team here. And just to mention yourself, Grania, I've been in contact with you over the past couple of months on a number of issues, and I just want to say thank you for your very quick and detailed responses to my queries. Some of them, while I might not like the answers, it was great to get more detail of what I was asking about. So I suppose I just want to maybe go back a bit. I know Councillor Nicholas was talking about employability and apprenticeships, and there was an open call for 2025, and I was just wondering, you mightn't have that figure now. Is that open call finished, and has there been many apprenticeships and employment created in the Northwest? I'd be happy enough to wait for that answer. And just a wee on the cavity wall, the 3 pilot projects that were done. It would be good to see a consultant's report on that, because as we know, the cavity wall insulation fails within a certain amount of time, and there's a lot of more work to be done on that. But it was good to get those 3 pilot programs carried out, one in my own area, so it would be very keen. I suppose the real questions will be answered, I suppose, after the winter, when people will hopefully see a difference that the renewed cavity wall insulation has done to their homes. So looking forward to that too as well. The next thing, about 2 or 3 more items, but I know you probably won't have the answers, and I'm quite happy to wait, Grania. But I was just looking over your report too, and I just want a wee bit more clarity about the private sector grants. I noticed in the year 24-25, there was 15.02 million given out in private sector grants, of which 2.98 million was given to this council district. If you could just maybe explain a wee bit what those private sector grants are, just a wee bit of clarity around that. And I suppose the next and the most important thing for our party at the minute is the lack of discretionary grants available for people who own their own homes. We all know that there is many people who have been living on their own homes, and they aren't able to upkeep their homes, and they need new roofs, electric, all those things that they were able to, because they couldn't afford it, they were able to turn to the housing executive in the past and get assistance with those grants. Those grants are called discretionary, as you know, Grania, and they're no longer as far as I'm aware, one of the minister's priorities. But we will be working hard as a party to try and get that raised again as one of the minister's priorities, because those grants did great work, and there are many, many homes within this council area that people are living in who can't afford to do the work, and their home is just going into dilapidation, where they would have been able to avail of those grants before. So we will be doing all that we can to try and get those grants reinstated. The next thing, there is a report about the traveller sites. And I was just wondering, I know we have received a letter about 2 years ago about the Letterkenny Road site, but there has been no mention of that in the report. And if I could get maybe an update on that. And just, I think finally, you'll be glad to hear, Gráinne, is the number of voids that I picked up during the report. While, you know, there may be 7 or 8 in Craig and 4 or 5 in other areas, we all know the housing stress we have in these areas. I do know, because of the Craig Heights scheme that's going to be coming on board, that some houses might be needed for decanting. But if you could maybe just a wee bit more clarity about why there are so many voids in each area when homes are much, much needed by people on the waiting list. So Gráinne, again, that's it. Thank you very much for replying to me so quickly in the past, and I look forward to working with you again in the future. And I totally understand if you haven't got answers to those queries at hand. And Eddie, I'll see you on Friday. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Logue. Councillor Logue, the sound here in the chamber was a bit difficult to hear you. So when it comes to the time of answering, if there's some topics that haven't been covered, it's likely because of the sound issues. So if you could let us know, we can pick them up then, if that's okay. Alderman Hussey, next, please.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you to the delegation from the Housing Executive. Couple of issues. It's already been referred to, most of them have already been referred to, the postcode lottery basic situation, points qualification, and I think it's fair to say, I hope you would agree, that that boils down to stock availability in the various areas. And what consideration do Housing Executive take of that? You know, it's an indicator of the problem. So how are you addressing that problem going forward? On Councillor Leonard's point with regard to the rural-urban scenario, and again, I heard what you said at the beginning, but I'm just wondering, is it possible to quantify some of the actual results of the improved rural situation that you've referred to? You talked about the 44.5 million new build, and I'm looking at the numbers for new build completed, under construction, and new build planned. And I wonder, can that be quantified either in solid numbers as to what's rural, what's urban, or even on a percentage basis, just to give us some indication of how we're progressing within the rural community on that. And my final point is with regard to, 2 points, adaptations. Is there an indication that there is an improvement in the turnaround time? You know, we've heard.
Sorry, excuse me, Alderman Hussey. Councillor Logue, would you mind putting your mic on mute, please? Go ahead, Alderman Hussey.
We can hear there, no sound problems. Sorry, where was it? Adaptations. The actual turnaround time, you know, from somebody applying and getting through to it. I mean, we hear the horror stories of cases where the client has actually passed by the time you get round to that. So is there evidence of an improvement in turnaround in that? And my final point, definitely the final point, regards energy efficiency. is the housing executive undertaking a programme of retrofitting, particularly on its older stock, to deal with the issue of energy efficiency? Or is it just a sort of scattergun approach to, you know, if something occurs, you're doing it? As I say, older stock obviously is where the retrofitting element comes into it. And again, we probably head into then to the area of skills available for a retrofitting program, if those skills are available. And that again has been referred to as well. But thank you for your presentation. Thank you.
Thank you, Alderman Hussey. Grania, back to yourselves.
Thank you very much, Chair. So just if I start with the social value and social enterprise work, I mean, these are two really, really important programmes, and thank you for your comments in relation to them. Yes, the social enterprise strategy is underway. The consultation, is underway and it's ongoing. It's a 3-month consultation, so I think it will take us to the end of the year, but we'll clarify that for you. It's certainly the consultation has only just been signed off internally, so I don't think the consultation is underway very long. It's in terms of social value. In fact, earlier today we had a discussion at our executive team on all of our work on social value and developing a social value strategy. And it is hugely powerful, actually, the amount of money and resource that we can, through social value and procurement, bring forward for communities. So the discussion that we had this morning was around how we do that best. So if you just take the programme that I mentioned today, the £15 million programme in this council area, we will be able to extract way more value from that 15 million through social value projects being delivered locally. So we were having a discussion today around what are the environmental improvements, what are the health improvements we can make, but in partnership with our contractors. So it's a really, really exciting area of focus. I should just at this point be remiss of me not to say that our housing community network, which is the network of tenants and tenants organisations that the housing executive that we have working as partners, have co-designed that social value strategy with us, and that's been hugely powerful because nobody knows better than tenants the work that's needed in their local community, and that's our job as a landlord, is to listen to their advice and use that advice to inform our social value strategy. So that will be coming out shortly, and again, it might be helpful to hear a little bit more at some point in the future, maybe at a committee meeting, about how we are doing that. One of the pieces of work that I've been really impressed by with the team is they've developed a platform within the housing executive that will allow us to do just what you said, Councillor, in relation to how we measure all of the different programmes on social value, and how we are able to set those out clearly, so that at any one time we should be able to go to any contract and say, right, what has that contract delivered for us in social value terms, both in terms of in real terms, in terms of the value, but also in terms of the ongoing impact. So that work is well underway. Strategy is coming out shortly, and again, might be useful to hear a bit more in due course. Councillor Logue, I wasn't able to hear everything you said, so we will follow up with you if there's other areas. In terms of apprenticeships, and yes, I mean, we're very fortunate as an organisation that there's a huge amount of support by the board, by the executive team for apprenticeships. There's no way that all of the work that we need to do in the future, including on retrofits and every other type of energy efficiency, we just won't be able to deliver it unless we have the skills. And some of our contractors are really struggling in terms of skills. So we are growing our own talent, and we have invested in more than 120 apprenticeships in the last year or so. And again, many of those, and they are regionally spread, and they are both by us as a landlord, direct apprenticeships, directly funded apprenticeships, and also apprenticeships that have come out through our procurement contract. So again, I'm happy to look at the numbers and give you the numbers for the West area. I don't have them with me, apologies, but certainly very happy to follow up on that. Certainly in relation to private sector grants, they are a hugely important intervention, both from a fuel poverty point of view, from a health and wellbeing point of view. And you're absolutely right, Councillor Logue, we haven't received the funding that we bid for in relation to a number of those grants, and there are very, very few discretionary grants available. Obviously, our disabled facilities grants are still in place. Our affordable warmth grants programme is still in place, although it's a reduced programme, as I said earlier. So we are certainly constrained in what we can fund. If I just answer the question in relation to the length of time that it takes for our grants, we've done an end-to-end review last year where we looked at all of the different parts of our grants program, where the housing executive is control of the time, in control of the time frame, versus, you know, the other aspects where it might be an occupational therapist or it might be the work of the contractor. And we have reduced right down to well under 200 days the level of time. It was way above that. So if you imagine from end to end a grant, and some of the grants could be £60,000 worth of investment in somebody's home. So they are complicated, and you know that. But everything from the OT referral through to us doing the assessment, agreeing and approving the works, then the individual going out and finding a contractor to do the works, and that takes quite some time. The work starting on site, the works being completed on site, us then going in and doing the post-works inspection and signing off. It is a complicated process end to end, not just here down south, across the water also. So we've certainly looked at where we can reduce all of the timeframes, and our colleagues have done a really significant programme of work. So everywhere where we can reduce our own timeframe, we have done it in as much as we can. And I should also add, it was our housing community network, our own tenants groups that worked alongside us in doing that work. I'm very grateful to them for that. I think they've won an award for that work. I think that's just, I suppose, a demonstration of how effective they are at holding us to account, and rightly so. Councillor Logue, you asked on the question about voids. I mean, I should say to you, I mean, really, the housing executives, our voids are really at a minimal. And so we have less than 1% of our stock, or there or thereabouts, are voids. And the reason for that is, I mean, if a housing executive property is void, it's either void, we're either in a change of tenancy where we're simply undertaking works, or where we are holding it for a particular type of refurbishment and we just haven't gone ahead with the work yet. But generally speaking, our voids are very, very low, and we compare well with our counterparts on these islands in relation to that, because housing need is so high. And so again, happy to send you the numbers on that, but I've no concerns as accounting officer in terms of that. I suppose just on the issue around points, and I think it's been answered. I think we're all aware of it. I mean, the point system and our system of allocating social housing here is to ration a public good. And when there is less of a public good, then you will need more points. And so I think the numbers, again, the helpful thing about numbers, about housing, is it is about numbers and people. So if you need more points, it will be because the area is an area of high level of housing demand. And so I think what that demonstrates is the importance of a steady and a sustainable supply of social housing, which we've all talked about. And I suppose in a way, to answer the question in relation to how does that feed into, I mean, effectively, it's the system of points and all of the other demographic information that's available to us that forms our housing need assessment. So we have two types of assessment. We have a 15-year assessment. So in other words, that takes account of how many births and deaths do we expect, what's the level of churn, what's the level of new build that's going to come forward, and we tot all of that up. We take account of a whole range of figures, and we project out the number of homes we're going to need on a cross 10-year basis. We then take account of, we do a shorter time frame, 5-year assessment of new social housing need. And that tends to be a higher number because it takes into account what's actually been built rather than what we think ought to be built. Okay, so they're the two housing need assessments that we undertake. And both of them are informed by our system of essentially housing need and the point system, as well as other factors. Chair, I'm just going to race through the last few. I think I may have covered everything there. Oh, just in terms of retrofits, yes, we do have a retrofit programme. It's a healthy one. We've just finished 1,400 retrofits, and we used a methodology which we designed in-house. It was on our no fines construction property type, older properties. We learned a huge amount through it because actually we had to procure it. So even our procurement teams learned a huge amount about how to procure contractors for retrofit. The lessons we learned from that, we've now folded into our next pilot, which is a whole house retrofit where we don't just do the fabric first approach. We are also putting in low carbon energy systems, and there's a number of schemes, I mentioned it, that are being delivered locally in this council area. So again, I think we'll get some really good evidence from that. But as I said to you earlier as well, we also have a cavity wall installation programme. So there's a number of energy efficiency programmes. Every penny I could spend in this, I would, to be blunt. It's the best value for money and for tenants' money. I think I've answered all those questions, I think.
Okay, thank you. And you'll be happy to hear we've only 2 left. And we're going to Alderman Cook online.
Thanks, Chair, for letting me in. And on behalf of the DUP, we would just like to thank Grania and Eddie for coming along today. Firstly, like others, I would just like to thank our local Northern Ireland Housing Executive workers. We know they do, they work really hard and do a tireless job. So, a special thanks to those. I'll try and keep it short. I don't want to regurgitate what's already been said, but I do totally agree with comments and frustrations around the increase in waiting lists, homelessness, temporary accommodation, and housing stress. Overall, we need to see more social and affordable homes in our city and district. And as a waterside councillor, I would just like to raise the well-known concerns expressed by local residents regarding the closure of the Housing Executive Office in the waterside. This office has long served as an accessible and familiar point of contact for many tenants. So I was just wondering if these would have a long-term plan for service provision in the waterside area following the closure, or will any form of local presence or outreach be maintained in the waterside? For example, mobile units or community drop-ins or something like that. And lastly, just following on from Councillor Leonard and Alderman Hussey's points, my colleagues who represent the rural DEAs were wondering if you had any more detail just around rural housing in our city and district, specifically relating to both new social and affordable housing and any planned maintenance as well. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Alderman Cook. Alderman Kerrigan.
Thank you very much, Chair, for allowing me in. And I do thank Grania and Eddie and the rest of the team for the report and for all the details. And I know there's a massive amount of work and all of that. And there is a big effort and there's a lot of challenging factors. And I know Grania has to go around all of the different councils there and proceed to give the report on each individual council. And everyone's looking for more in their own area. And I fully understand that. But just more a comment again, thanking her and thanking the team for the work that they have put in. We see the good work that's done, particularly by the Supporting People programme and how that had been sort of ring fenced and the funding towards that. And it's fantastic the work is done there. And again, just to reiterate your comments, Grania, in relation to the work of the Housing Community Network. And I've been at meetings with them and you see their passion for it and the information that you're getting from those people on the ground and how it really is that grassroots organisation. And it's so important, that feedback from them. Again, in the pack you're mentioning, I will be come into my own local area here and the new build work that was done through rural housing in Sion Mills, which is appreciated. And again, even currently, the rural housing, rural housing needs test program that has in Clady and again now in Spamount and Ergana in my own DEA. So again, it is very much appreciated. There is that work. I know we will always, particularly for the rural councillors, be looking for more of those dwellings in the rural areas because it's the people weren't putting those rural villages and settlements down because there wasn't any availability there. And I know we're trying to change that format now that they will put in the like of Gervitia, put in the like of Crewbridge, and then it's the further down the list of the other settlements then that they could go to. So as I say, just to thank you very much for the work that you are doing. I know it's limited resources. I know there's so much more and how passionate you are about it, Grania. And but again, I just thank you for all that you've done, and I do thank you very much for the detail and the report and for the answers that you have provided. So a handy one from me this time. Thank you very much, Chair.
Thank you, Alderman Kerrigan. Grania and Eddie, back to yourselves.
Thank you. And again, just to thanks again to members for their comments in relation to the local teams. And yes, I mean, if I cover just the office space and just to be very clear, and I think this is obvious, but I'll say it anyway, the decision to take our 3 offices and to relocate is really about increasing our investment in this council area and in the city. I'm really, really passionate about that. The best landlords are landlords that have, are locally present, but also have good office space for their teams to work together. And we've had 3 offices, so teams not working physically in the same location, and bringing teams together is going to mean our asset management colleagues who are responsible for the upgrade of our buildings, working really, really closely with our housing management colleagues who are responsible for all the services that go with those homes, sitting alongside housing benefit colleagues who have so much work to do to make sure people have the right benefits, sitting alongside our supporting people colleagues. So, we need one team, and at the moment we have teams and they're just spending so much time in cars and in traffic and not sitting next to each other. So where we have co-located teams in other parts and other council areas, it has always worked. Now, that is always painful and uncertain for teams that have to move, and I totally get that. And so we have done, you know, a really, and I've personally obviously been over to meet the teams here, and I've made that point to them that this is about growing, hopefully, our teams in this city and in the wider council area, and investing, and also making sure that, you know, we have really lovely office locations, because we want to attract staff and attract people. So I fully understand where there are concerns. Absolutely, we've been really clear about that. Councillor, you have my absolute assurance, and I've made this point to our local residents groups as well, who are worried. And I, you know, entirely understandably so, to ask the question, you know, are you kind of in some way, moving from Waterside in terms of our service? Absolutely not. You know, the Housing Executive has always been an organisation that has made sure it has a local presence. So we are very, very happy to look at ways in which we can make sure that we are, you know, we have a presence, a service presence there. We won't have an office presence, but we will certainly not be found wanting in terms of making sure that our patch managers are visible, our local teams are visible, and that, you know, we will make sure we do that, and we do that everywhere. And again, we will look at all opportunities that we possibly can in relation to that. So you have my assurance on that point, and I've made that point to our local tenants too. It's hugely important that we are visible and we are located in those communities. In relation to rural housing, and again, you know, thank you for making the point in relation to, and Councillor Kerrigan also, in relation to rural housing need. The best way to demonstrate housing need is to get under the skin of the numbers, and we've talked about this a few times tonight. So that's why those latent demand tests in rural areas are so important, and there's a number of examples across all 11 councils actually where we have done latent demand tests. We've gone and we've done basically a local community consultation, where we go and we meet with the local community. We say, if homes were to be built here, would you put your name on the waiting list? And we do tend to find in some areas housing need that we weren't aware of, because people for whatever reason didn't put their name on the waiting list. So if we don't know about you, we can't count you. So latent demand tests are a really, really good way, and there's a number of examples. I'm going to all 11 councils over the last few weeks and next few weeks, and there's been a number of examples where we've been able to support schemes because we have additional data. So again, our local teams, our place shaping teams, if you want to hear more about those, we're very happy to talk about that. And I suppose, Councillor Kerrigan, the other thing I should have mentioned as well is, you know, I'm very conscious, maybe just because Pump Street is front of mind today, because we've been there to see it with the team. You know, the answer to everything is not always new build, and I think we also need to look at what we have in terms of refurbishments. I'm very conscious, actually, down south there has been a huge programme of refurbishment of dilapidated or derelict stock in rural areas, and so there, you know, we have to. Somebody said earlier, Councillor said, we have to think outside the box, and we also, I think, in the longer term, need to be looking at what is available to us and what can we bring back into use. It won't be a solution everywhere, but certainly refurbishments, I think, will go a long way. And I suppose just to say, huge thank you for your commendations for the team, and rightly so, and also a big thank you to all of you, because just to finish on, we work really, really well together, and I'm very grateful to everyone's time. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much. We have no further indicated speakers. So just to Eddie and Grania, to thank you both on behalf of the committee for your attendance and your detailed answers to all of our queries. As members have already said, we work very closely with Eddie and his team here, and hopefully we will continue to do that for a long time to come. So thank you for your attendance. I'm sure you've got better things to be doing, but you're more than welcome to stay on for the rest of our committee meeting as we continue on. But thanks again for your attendance. Okay, members. Item number 6 is chairperson's business, and our chair, Councillor Nealis, has passed on the list that people have contacted her. The first is Councillor McGinley.
I just feel that it's really important that we continue to raise the plight for the survival of the Palestinian people. The events that occurred on the 7th of October 2023 have been used by the Israeli state to inflict yet another onslaught on the beleaguered people of Palestine. The people of Gaza and of the West Bank have endured decades of oppression, of siege, and of complete occupation from the Israeli state. Over the past 2 years, we have had a genocide live streamed on our phones and on our TVs. We've borne witness to men, women, and children being slaughtered and starved. We've seen repeated violations of international law and war crimes being committed by Israel, not only against Palestinians, but also by a number of Israeli strikes in surrounding countries, including strikes against those who were attempting to negotiate a way forward in Qatar. And these war crimes will have to be answered for, and those who are responsible must be held to account. Israel claims to be acting in self-defence. Let me be clear, genocide is not self-defence. Illegally detaining humanitarian activists, attempting to deliver aid, food, medicine and baby formula is not self-defence. Displacing an entire population is not self-defence, and carpet bombing civilians who have nowhere else to go is not self-defence. The decision of Hamas and the Palestinian forces to enter into the talks in Egypt has brought Israel to a crossroads. They can no longer continue their spin or deception. They must decide to either commit to good faith negotiations, which can end this conflict, or sabotage the potential for any form of lasting peace. The future of Palestine is now about much more than just their human and national rights of their own people. It has become the defining question about the future of humanity and morality, and the genocide, and the occupation in Saoirse and Palestine.
Thank you, Councillor McGinley. I have 2 indicated speakers, and the first is Councillor Harkin.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Councillor McGinley, for making sure that we were able to put a spotlight on this today. I'm sure people heard today that the Prime Minister of Britain, Keir Starmer, argued that nobody should join Palestine protest today because it was un-British. And I'm not surprised at this, because Starmer has done everything he can to criminalise Palestine solidarity, and now he wants to limit people's right to protest. And this is absolutely disgraceful. And despite what Starmer is saying, people across Ireland and across Britain will join massive protests today to mark the 2nd anniversary of the genocide that the Israeli state is committing in Gaza. And I think what's happened is the world has been witness over the last 2 years to the terror that Palestinians have faced for the last 70 years since the Nakba. Some people still insist that all this is about October 7th, but October 7th has only ever happened because of what came before. And I think the suffering of the Palestinians over the last 2 years, this is what's been inflicted on them before that. And that is what is in store unless we can force the Israeli regime to stop what it's doing. And that's why I think we have to increase the pressure on all governments, the United States governments, the British government, the Irish government, and indeed here at home in the north, because Stormont does continue to play some role in this. I think that there's ever increasing questions about the role of InvestNI, which continues to fund businesses that are involved in the creation of parts for F-35s that are being used in Gaza to slaughter children. And the British government signed up to a treaty in 2014 that said, if you're involved in the production of parts for F-35s or other weapons that are involved or cause crimes against humanity or genocide, then you're complicit. And there's a treaty there, which means that the British government and indeed Stormont should not be involved in that. So I think we have to, demand sanctions right across the board, because at the end of the day, this is the only way that we're going to force Israel to stop slaughtering innocent Palestinians. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Harkin. Councillor McDade.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Councillor McGinley, for raising it. I agree with what has been said by the previous speakers. This has been 2 years of absolute heartbreak watching this unfold on our screens. But it did not start on the 7th of October 2023. This started in 1948, and what happened on the 7th of October was an excuse then for Israel to step up absolute terror that they've been putting on the Palestinian people. 730 days. So imagine for 730 days what every single person is living through. Hospitals are being bombed. Schools are being bombed. Places where people should feel safe are turning into mass graves. Children are being buried alive in rubble beneath their homes where they should be feeling safe, where they should feel loved, where they should feel heat. Journalists are being targeted. They stop the footage getting out so that the rest of the world doesn't know what's happening. They're deliberately targeting journalists and photojournalists. Governments across the world have failed miserably. The Irish government continues to allow warplanes to use our airspace. The British government continues to fund and support everything to do with it. The PSNI have been sent over to arrest pensioners in London for peacefully protesting. And I don't even want to talk about Trump because that'll just put me in even worse form. I'm been bad enough for him as it is. But I just want to be very clear, this isn't a conflict. A conflict has two sides, and there is absolutely no fairness here whatsoever. This is a country of innocent people and an absolute war machine who are committing genocide, which has been confirmed. So I think today we just need to recognise, Sean has mentioned that Starmer has suggested that people don't protest today, people don't join rallies, but I actually think it's more important than ever that we all rise up, that we continue to be the voice of the Palestinian people, because they don't have a voice at the minute. And when we're here and we can speak and we can shout and we can boycott and we can protest, they can't bomb us into silence. So let's not let them, and let's just join every rally we can and fight past them. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor McDade. Alderman Hussey.
Thank you, Chair. Today in particular, my thoughts and prayers are with those who have been impacted or were impacted on 7th of October. The nearly 1,200 who were murdered, massacred. The 251 hostages who were taken back into Gaza by a terrorist organization, Hamas. They are nothing other than that. They are an organization whose stated aim is the eradication of the state of Israel. Jewish people. That is their stated aim, from the river to the sea, from the River Jordan to the Mediterranean Sea. So as I say, my thoughts and prayers at this moment in time, particularly on the second anniversary of the terrorist invasion of Israel by Hamas and other terrorist groups, other Palestinian terrorist groups. And I think it's highly inappropriate to actually hijack this day on the other side of the coin. I have said in this chamber before that this is not a one-sided argument. It's a two-sided argument. All we've heard to date is one-sided condemnation. There should be condemnation going both ways. And I accept there have been excesses that will be examined. I trust that the powers that be that are trying to bring the sides together and come to a conclusion of horrific events that are happening in that area can be dealt with successfully. I don't know. I just trust and hope that they do. But I also have to comment on, this total concentration on Hamas and Gaza and all of the rest of it. There's no mention of Sudan, for example, where, 2 million children, according to reports, are starving. No mention of that. And there's a civil war going on there. All right, that's all right. It's our friends, our terrorist friends in Gaza and Hezbollah and others that are more important than other situations. So as I say, I conclude again with my opening remark. My thoughts and prayers are with those impacted and I include all who are impacted by what happened on 7th of October 2 years ago, and indeed those who are waiting for their loved ones to be returned. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Alderman Hussey. Members, the next councillor who has chairperson's business is our chairperson, Councillor Nelis.
I'm just coming in today to raise awareness of anaphylaxis during Anaphylaxis Awareness Week. This is a hidden disability that affects around 3 to 5% of the population, but something that is a very, very serious disability in terms of how life-threatening an allergic reaction can be. I want to send my solidarity to all allergy sufferers and their families, and how you're excluded from things as an allergy, a food allergy sufferer. You're excluded from things that you would never imagine. And this is especially tough for teenagers and young children, you know, to understand why they're not allowed to go into an ice cream parlor, or why they're not allowed, you know, certain youth clubs or different places that sell products that could genuinely endanger their lives. There has been a marked rise in EpiPen prescriptions, and this is an indication that obviously there's a rise in severe allergies now, but there has been a decrease in fatalities, suggesting that there's been an improved emergency treatment, and faster administration and more awareness in and around anaphylaxis and how dangerous it is. So I just really wanted to bring that up today, and also just to commend our own council. I contacted I contacted Barry, and he was telling me that the leisure attendant staff are all trained in the new version of the National Pool Lifeguard qualification, and this qualifies them to aid in the administering of EpiPens. And there's also a similar training to this in the new First Aid at Work qualification for the council staff. So it's just something that I wanted to bring up, because it is something where you just don't realise how much it affects you. For example, my young boy, he wanted to go to a summer scheme, and none of the staff were trained in EpiPen administration. And now, to be fair to them, they actually went and got the training done so that he could attend, but something that it affects everyday life. And I feel that it's something that we all sort of need to remember in terms of inclusion and access to our own council facilities. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Nelis, for that. Members, the next two items are items that I wish to raise myself, and people will be aware of the events over the weekend in and around the convent in Pump Street. And I know from speaking to our chief executive that council staff have been working extremely hard on that over the weekend, through the early hours of Saturday morning and to Sunday. And I wonder, John, if it would be possible for you to give us an update on the entirety of the situation at the minute, please. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Chair. Members, as the Chair has just said, we received a call overnight Saturday, early Sunday morning, around about 3:30, requiring assistance in relation to an incident in Pump Street, which turned out to be a structural collapse, as you now know. There were a number of people who were displaced from their accommodation, 4 adults, 5 children, one of which was a baby. Within about an hour or so, we had a rest centre opened, less than an hour actually, we had a rest centre opened in Bishop Street Community Centre. We provided shelter for the impacted people. We provided actually more than that. We provided food and some basic essentials as well. We did that up until about late Sunday morning, when support was then provided by the Western Health and Social Care Trust, and indeed those people, those unfortunate people who were caught in this situation were subsequently temporarily rehomed, as we understand it, by the housing executive. On Sunday itself, Karen and Connor Canning organised our building control officers to be on site. They met with the owners of the building. They agreed and worked with the owners to put in place the temporary hoarding that is in place at the minute, with obviously public safety being at the forefront of our minds. And since then, we've been in continuous and ongoing engagement with the building owner, with a whole range of statutory agencies, including our own teams in planning and building control and environment, across our communications teams, and also with HED, Historic Environment Division in particular. The latest meeting was this morning, multi-agency meeting this morning, to include the owners. The entire situation was discussed, an update on it. The owner has secured the services of their own structural engineer who has an opinion on the matter. Council has moved very quickly to appoint what is known as a CARE structural engineer. That's a structural engineer who has extensive knowledge of listed buildings, CARE registered, bearing in mind that this is a grade B1 listed building. So that engineer is currently assessing the situation. There's a further meeting was to take place at 4 o'clock this afternoon. At the meeting this morning, the building owner and his agent had promised documentation in relation to health and safety, in relation to any potential asbestos that may be on site, and potential options for possible part or limited or in total demolition for us to assess. Once we receive this information, and obviously since I've been in this meeting, I'm not sure the progress of the 4 o'clock meeting, we will assess it. We will also be asking the structural engineer appointed on behalf of council to assess it, and we will continue to liaise with HED. If required, and if we think it beneficial, we will call another meeting this evening. We talked about the potential of a meeting around about 8 o'clock to give some time to look at documentation on the assumption that we've received it. Other sort of peripheral work in and around this, we have engaged this afternoon with impacted businesses insofar as we can quickly, and we will try to do that further. In Pump Street, obviously businesses in that area are impacted. We want to be able to communicate with those businesses what is happening, what we know of the situation, what action has been taken, and try to keep them appraised of the situation. As far as I'm aware, and Karen, I know, is obviously keeping in touch with emails as we speak, we have not yet received any application for consent to demolish the building. Clearly, there is currently a balance between health and safety obligations. The owner has to balance these obligations between health and safety and the obligations under legislation to protect listed buildings. What I can say, members, is, as you can hear from my quick debrief, the owner is currently very engaged and has been engaged in the last couple of days. Council is extremely proactive in this. There have been numerous meetings across council. Council officers have responded from the early hours of Sunday morning across this issue and continue to do so. Our objective is to reach an agreed position on the way forward and next steps urgently and quickly, with the safety of the public, Parliament, but also our obligations to limit, if possible, any further loss to our built heritage, and obviously also to ensure the trading conditions in the street are any interruption to those are minimised. So, members, that's a broad update in terms of where we are. Chair Karen, do you wish to add any further to that?
Through you, Chair. Members, just to say, it's my understanding we had a brief meeting with them at 4 p.m, John, from the communication from the team, and we've offered a further meeting this evening, and our team have gone out on site again this evening just to monitor again progress. So we are all more than happy to keep involved in the coming hours and days. Thanks.
Thank you both very much for that very important update to this committee. And thank you to your teams as well for the work that has gone on over the weekend. The important work around the people who had been displaced and making sure they had somewhere to go and the supplies that they had needed, but also then looking at the building and trying to ascertain what damage was done there as well. And I'm sure I speak for everyone and say that we do massively appreciate your efforts and your commitment to this with offering meetings out of hours, so to speak. It's been hard to see. Members will recall that previously we had the Austin's working group, and whilst Austin's may have moved on slightly, there was always it was always anticipated that the Austin's task force would be rolled out to other buildings across the district, and I think this issue is key for that task force to be looking at. People will also recall that at this committee, I think 2 months ago, we had a deputation from Inner City Trust, who obviously expressed interest around the Northwest Regeneration Fund and looking to see how they could support council and vice versa around regenerating buildings within the city centre, first and foremost. And I think it might be an idea to hold convene a meeting of the Austin's task force initially till we find out where exactly we're at, because I do appreciate, John, that this is a very fast moving situation with the focus on inviting organisations such as the Inner City Trust and others who have a keen interest in built heritage and regeneration within the city centre to see how we take that forward. I do have 2 indicated speakers, Councillor McGinley and Councillor Harkin, but that would be, if members are happy, first of all, that suggestion around the task force and the way forward.
Just before you bring others in, you mentioned the Inner City Trust. It was remiss of me to say we're literally in hourly contact with the Inner City Trust at the moment. But obviously, members' comments are welcome.
Thanks for that, John. Councillor McGinley.
Gurmagit, and thank you, John and Karen D, for the update firstly, but also for the work of the teams in terms of securing the site and for the safety of the people that live in and around that area. It is important work. I'm just wondering, it's obviously we're coming on this a period of the year where we see an increase in storms. We do have significant built heritage throughout the city and right across the district. I don't know if it could tie into the suggestion from yourself, Brian, in terms of the task force having a meeting but focusing on built heritage, and you know what proactive steps are being taken to ensure that the heritage buildings are safe, that we're not reacting to the impacts of a storm, as opposed to, you know, I just think we could I know the council's responsibility in that is in terms of the safety of the structure, and the overall responsibility lies with the owners of the buildings, but I think that the reaction, when we can nearly expect when there's a storm that we're going to come up against some form of a crisis in terms of a heritage building, that we could maybe be looking at having them assessed or having the owners having them assessed. I don't know, is there anything in terms of updates that you might have from that end, or is that something that we could tie into a task force?
Well, through you, Chair, and again, I'm going to ask Karen to come in on this too. In terms of proactivity with regard to built heritage, there are a few councils that are so proactive as this particular one. We work very closely with Inner City Trust. We've had numerous conferences, courses, meetings with statutory partners with all of them in relation to all of the main heritage assets in the city, and actually well beyond the city. However, a lot of them are in private ownership. Where we are aware or become aware of issues associated structurally with buildings, we will issue dangerous structures notices. We have in the past issued a dangerous structure notice in respect of the building in Pump Street which compelled the owner, the current owner, to undertake work a number of years ago. So we are quite active in that space. More broadly, we are very active in trying to ensure that there is a long-term sustainable future for many of our built heritage privately owned buildings. And we do work with Inner City Trust and a whole range of agencies to assist in the working up of business cases or proposals to achieve funding to bring them back to life. A case in point being Austin's, clearly, and a whole range of other buildings that Karen and her team, our economic development team, and others are working on. We can always do more, of course, and I think if members are minded to proceed with the task force to look at a wider range of buildings, that would be, I think, a very welcome development and would signal further our commitment as a council to the long-term sustainability of our built heritage. But we do a lot at the moment, and there is always room for more.
Not much more, just members, you will be aware we do have a heritage plan in place, and we have heritage stakeholders working group, which we bring anyone who has an interest in the built heritage to. And indeed, as John said, our teams work very closely to support both the building owners and Inner City Trust in particular, who have been fantastic at reusing a lot of listed buildings and other historic assets within the city and district. We will continue to do that, but certainly more than happy to consider anything further in terms of clearly making buildings safe. We have some powers in terms of dangerous structures. We may well get further powers in terms of the dereliction legislation that's currently going through central government, and also some controls through our planning and listed building legislation, but primarily, obviously, the owner is responsible for undertaking that. But certainly more than happy to engage with members of the task force and indeed other stakeholders and see if there's anything more at all we can do. Thank you, Chair.
Great, Karen, thank you. Councillor Harkin.
Thank you, Councillor Tierney, and thanks for putting this on the agenda, because I do think it is very important that we discuss it. And thanks, John and Karen, for the update. And I do appreciate how quickly Council and other agencies have moved into action around this. I mean, obviously, to have people displaced, to have a street closed down, to have businesses not able to operate, workers not able to go to their jobs, this is a very significant event in the city. And has had a massive impact, and it is now taken up a lot of resources in terms of council resources, statutory agencies, and us having a discussion here in the council and talking about reviving the task force that helped with the discussions around Austin's. Now, this was probably caused by the storm in terms of the damage, but it could have been another event. And I think that there's a lot of responsibility on the owner of the building for this situation, and I think that there will need to be questions asked about how we got here. Families displaced. We're lucky nobody got hurt, and there is a lot of instances where people, in my opinion, with very deep pockets, are sitting on buildings and doing very little with them, allowing them to decay, allowing them to deteriorate, and the outcome of that, or the consequence of that, is the situation that's developed on Pump Street, where they become a danger to the people around them and have an impact on people and businesses well beyond the one building. So, there was a building burned at McGee not so long ago, and very quickly young people got demonized for this. This, in my opinion, is just as much an anti-community thing. Because it shouldn't have actually happened. More could have been done to avoid this situation. And it's not the first instance of this. So I think that we do need to look at the ownership and their responsibilities. Again, I'm happy for the task force or for the council to play a role in trying to move this forward. But there's other buildings that are in a similar state. And I think a lot more can be done to actually make sure that this kind of situation doesn't actually transpire. I think that the people who own those buildings have the means to do something about them, and they shouldn't be waiting around for the council or for a crisis like this to emerge before something happens. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Harkin. I agree with you that there's other buildings, and that's where I think Councillor McGinley's suggestion around the task force looking at, for want of a better word, some type of a register of those buildings to see where we're at. And as John and Karen have already outlined, there's lots of work that goes on around those, but I think it would be better if it's brought under the task force so that we can have that wider discussion on it. Alderman Hussey.
Good, Chair, and I wasn't aware of the situation in Pump Street, but listening to the report from officers, I congratulate them for the response and others who have been involved. You yourself, Chair, are perfectly right with regard to the Austin's task force, because members will recall that I was very keen that that task force would be a template for just situations such as this. And I stressed the issue, as others have done today, of heritage buildings throughout the entire district. Councillor Harkin has referred there to a building being burnt. I'm mindful of the mill in Sion Mills. I'm mindful of the Alexander House, which this council are engaged in trying to do something there, which has been considerably damaged by fire. And I do think the task force should be coming together. We should have an audit and ask the public what buildings do they think the council need to be looking at with regard to our task force going forward. Can't do everything, but at least we should know the size of the problem or the issues that will lie out there. So I would sincerely welcome the re-establishment or the reinvigoration of that task force. In this case, on a one issue item, the particular property that has been damaged or is in need of attention, but at the same time, remembering the remit that I would hope that the task force is undertaking to look at heritage properties throughout the city and district. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Alderman Hussey. And again, I think that refers back to Councillor McGinley's suggestion. Councillor Mooney.
Chair, I don't have much more to say, but obviously just to say thank you to John for the update and for Karen. And obviously council were one of the first responders, council officers were one of the first responders over the weekend. And I'm really glad to hear it, because council has that expertise within the departments that we have. But I also welcome the chance to reinvigorate and re-energise the Austin's task force, because that allows members the opportunity. We had officers on site and the chief executive and our engineers and resources, but that allows members to interrogate somewhat this issue. John was saying that there are structural engineers on site. Those conclusions and their reports will probably determine what happened here, whether it was a storm or it was any other malfunction within that building. But through the task force, hopefully we could get answers from that. But I'm also heartened to see that we have a local expert body as well, like the Inner City Trust, who can use their expertise and their experience. And John was saying that they're being touched on every hour thus far. And it's really good to have that resource on tap as well. So just to say thank you on behalf of the SDLP and thus far for your endeavours, John, and the team as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Mooney. We have no further indicated speakers on that item, members. So just to recap, we're all agreed on the convening of the task force to look at this particular building, but also looking at other buildings across the district around all of this stuff. The last item that I have, and I don't want to get into the wider budget that was announced in the 26 counties today, but I do think there was an important announcement around the Derry to Dublin flight, and I just want to ask the Chief Executive if there is any update from our point of view. I know it was mentioned in the budget, but it would be good to get your own perspective, John. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. I mean, there was a further announcement from the Irish government this afternoon in relation to its commitment to fund the Derry Dublin Airlink, and that has to be said is a hugely welcome commitment. We've spoken about it before. This comes after a very long engagement with the Irish government, by this council, by the airport, at a cross-border level with our council in Donegal, partners in Donegal, and across a whole range of city and district partners. We have been advised by the Irish government that the target is to have the route operational by the autumn of next year. There's a lot of work to do between now and then, obviously, as a PSO, public service obligation, essentially. There has to be tender documentation drawn up. There has to be pre-market testing undertaken. There has to be a tender process, an evaluation of a tender process, and then a lead-in for those interested airlines who may respond in terms of the setting up of the route. The good news is that work is underway. It has already been commenced by Irish Government Department of Transport officials. We are working with them. The tender process, all of the tender documentation, is something that is being led by the Irish government, which is very different from the London PSO, where the onus is on council to lead that process and liaise with the Department for Transport in London. But we've obviously got significant expertise now in leading that process, and we're liaising with the Irish government officials. So good progress. Further positive announcement, and that all flows, members, as you know, from a request by the Minister for Transport to meet in Leinster House back in the early part of the summer. And so we're obviously pleased from an officer perspective and on behalf of council as a director on the board of CODA that we're moving in this direction. So it's further good news for the sustainability of the airport. Thank you.
Right, John, and thank you very much for that update, and we'll hopefully be seeing more updates coming through this committee in the weeks and months ahead. Members, it is just gone 6. Unless anybody wants to come on that last issue, I would be keen to take a quick comfort break for maybe 5 or 10 minutes. People happy enough? Yeah, okay, thank you. Okay, members, we'll kick off again with item number 7, is the matters arising from the open minutes of this committee held on Tuesday, the 2nd of September, pages 121 to 142. Alderman Hussey.
Thank you, Chair. Item GSP 168/25, page 134. Members will recall that I had expressed concern at the lack of venues outside the city. I'm going to just say a sincere thank you to officers who have arranged an event now in Strabane. It's disappointing that at the moment there's only one school that has said they will attend that, but the officers made the effort, and that is to be appreciated. Second item, if I may, Chair, and it's the following. GSP 169, page 136. In the second last paragraph, as Councillor Farrell was speaking, he said the expansion of McGee was critical to the development and growth of the city and district. I think I do need to refer to a case that members will probably be aware of a young student who found herself unable to remain at McGee. And some people have described it as an incidence of Anglophobia with regard to that young student. And I'm sure, I trust that the Chamber will agree with me that it's a disgraceful act that young student found it necessary to leave McGee and return home to England. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you for that, Alderman Hussey. Councillor McDade.
Thank you, Chair. Just want to declare an interest because in that article my work was mentioned and Ulster was mentioned. Obviously, if the case is true that someone was made to feel unwelcome because of where they're from, we completely and utterly condemn that. And it wouldn't be my experience here. I find that everybody in Derry is very welcoming to everybody, but obviously this young lady had a different experience, so hopefully she's happier in her new university. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor McDade, and your declaration of interest has been noted. Councillor Jackson.
Yeah, on a similar note, we're conscious that the university expansion is key, and it's critical to growing the economy here in the Northwest. I know that there's many students from the city and district that travel all around the world to study, and are welcome to make massive contributions to the local economy wherever they find themselves in that place of study and settle down. We, as part of the university expansion, we want to welcome people. We want to welcome students in huge numbers to this city, and any discrimination, any attempt to make anybody feel unwelcome whilst they're here needs to be condemned. And I wholeheartedly agree with the proposal, and I've no doubt that we would be unanimous in this chamber that discrimination in any form is wrong, and I'm conscious that we have been. There was a very successful event today, Chair, in this chamber, in this building, where we made it very clear that from this city and district, there's no room for racism in any form, and that's and that should be a constant theme throughout everything that we do. And I think that was reflected in the charter that was endorsed today in this building, that racism is wrong and needs to be called out in all of its forms. So and if that case is true, it needs to be called out, and thank Alderman Hussey for doing so. Thanks, sir.
Thank you, Councillor Jackson. Councillor Harkin.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, look, I wholeheartedly agree. Everybody should be made to feel absolutely welcome in Derry, no matter where they're from in the world or whatever community they're from here in the north of Ireland or any part of Ireland or any of our communities across the city. So it's disappointing to hear that this happened, and if there's an investigation and it's true that the university should be on the front foot to address it. But I do think that we've had, over the last year, we've had a lot of people across the north feel very unwelcome here in the north of Ireland. We've had people burned out of their houses. We've had people forced to put up Union Jacks to show that they belong and they're local. And there's far too many politicians or political parties that say when they're discussing this that the people who are doing this have legitimate concerns. Burning people out of their houses, discriminating against people, racist attacks, pogroms, beating people up because of the colour of their skin, which is happening, not just in East Belfast, but in different parts of this island. All of that is completely unacceptable. So I'm glad Alderman Hussey raised this because it gives us an opportunity for all the political parties to condemn the kind of brutal racism that we've been witnessing over the last year.
Thank you, Councillor Harkin, and thank you, Alderman Hussey, for raising it. And I think it's widespread across this chamber. And as Councillor Jackson has referenced, the Charter today sends out a clear message across the city and district that racism in all of its forms is not welcome. And I think that that's the message that we have to send out. Any other further matters? Is different matter? Yep, Councillor Harkin.
Thank you, Chair. It's of two items, GSP 159 and GSP 164. And the first one on 159 is in relation to the anti-poverty strategy. And what I wanted to say is that in recent weeks, party leaders have given a lot of commentary about Derry in the Northwest. One party threatened to starve Derry of funding, and we've heard the First Minister saying that Derry is thriving. And a lot of people have taken issue with that because I don't think Derry is thriving. And I don't think it makes sense to tell people that they have to, unless they're boosting Derry, they're not being hopeful. And I think that there's the last couple of weeks, particularly where we've had an announcement that there wouldn't be funding for our for Derry City and for Institute, where we're dealing with the repercussions of cuts to Northlands, where we're dealing with the closure of the crisis intervention service, where we're dealing with the closure of Echo. We also had a motion put through the council last month about timetable disparity that still hasn't been addressed. That's a very basic thing. But on top of that, when you're in a situation where you've 25% child poverty, when you've got the highest number of people on the housing waiting list across the north, when we have the fewest employers of anywhere signed up to the real living wage, because everybody knows that Derry workers are paid less than many other places across the north and across this island, it's not good enough to tell people that the Derry is thriving, because it's not for many people. And the more you have to tell people that it's thriving, I think means that there's a disconnect. So I think a lot of people have been insulted by this. Now, the point about the anti-poverty strategy that is relevant to this is that this was an opportunity for the executive to actually come up with a plan that would allow a lot of people who are not thriving right now to thrive, because that's what we've been waiting on for 20 years, for this strategy to address deep-seated and entrenched deprivation right across our communities that we all know too well here, that includes addressing the housing crisis. So I just think, the absence of that has actually stopped people from thriving. And people are fighting now for a different type of anti-poverty strategy. So I just think that, these comments about Derry thriving are, maybe some people are absolutely thriving, but I think for a lot of people, there's a huge level of disconnect. And I just wanted to get a comment on that in here today, Mayor or Chair.
Thank you very much. I have Alderman Cook online. I do think it may have been on the previous item, so I'm going to check. And if it is, I'll come to you, Councillor Jackson. Alderman Cook.
Thanks, Chair. And you're right, it was on the previous item. And I just wanted to be associated with the comments in the chamber today around racism. It's not welcome and it's not wanted in any of our community. So I just wanted to be associated with those comments. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Alderman Cook. My apologies. We had moved on before either the comment came through or I seen it. My apologies on that. Councillor Jackson on the anti-poverty issue. Yep.
Yeah. And I'm going to start by saying that it is disgraceful, and it's a shame that there are 25% of children living in the city and district in poverty, and that needs to be addressed. And there needs to be a properly resourced strategy to address that and to address poverty right across the north. I've already give our view in relation to any anti-poverty strategy that's contained within a partitionist lens is doomed to failure. We need to be having a wider focus in terms of building the economy and lifting people out of poverty. In relation to the comments and the criticism around the direction that our statement that our city and the Northwest is thriving, I can understand the criticism, can understand the concern. From our perspective, we are working day in, day out to ensure that our city and district is thriving and the entire Northwest region maximises the opportunities that are in front of us. I attended the Chamber of Commerce President's event in Friday, and within that room, despite the concerns and the challenges that the Northwest region has faced over many decades, there was a fair degree of optimism. The Chamber President made it very clear that the tide is changing. There are opportunities, there's major investment, there's increased confidence to invest in the Northwest. There's opportunities for our young people to create a future for themselves here, whereas before we've lost far too many young people to immigration in the past. We need to change our fortunes. And one of the clear message from the outgoing president was that we need to show ambition. There's no ceiling to our ambition. There's no ceiling to what we can achieve, and we need to be selling the Northwest region. We shouldn't be constantly putting ourselves down. We shouldn't be putting ceilings or limits on what our ambition could achieve. And that's the clear message, and that's the clear message from our perspective, is that we want to sell the Northwest as an economy that is growing, as an economy that's building a bright future for young people to stay here. And they do that and they achieve that. We need everybody to work together. And I would encourage everybody, despite the very genuine criticism and challenges that we're all experiencing, we need to show ambition. We need to sell ourselves. We do have a wealth of talent, and we want to retain them here. We want to maximise the opportunities that are in front of us, and we've all got a responsibility to do that. Thanks, Chair.
Thank you. Councillor Jackson, Councillor Mooney.
Chair, just to come on the debate, and it was actually an interesting debate. I mean, there's one issue was brought up by Councillor Harkin, but I mean, going back to the anti-poverty strategy, it's clear that, I mean, my remarks last month, and I still stand by them, was that this document was just thrown out from that department based on 2 adverse High Court decisions. And it was probably on the back of, we need to get someone out, and that's it. I think everybody in this chamber basically critiqued it and said that it wasn't meeting any targets or KPIs and things like that there. I note the remarks of Councillor Jackson, and basically we have to sell ourselves and X, Y, and Z. And to a certain extent, I think that's correct. But when you're looking at somebody who's there charged with responsibility of selling this region, it's the MSDNI. And I don't know if the MSDNI has done a great job for Derry in the Northwest. And they're charged with the responsibility of bringing in investment into this jurisdiction. Now, they're not doing it and bringing it down here, then we need to ask questions. We've seen a local representative who has left that board a few months ago. So that's not a great look for InvestNI. But that aside, Chair, I just, like, I don't think there's any lack or dearth of spirit from this local community and this council in North West in trying to promote itself. I think we do have a very good job at it, and I think we do it to the best of our abilities. But those responsible in Belfast and people like that there, they need to be showing a lot more on that. And I think that is what the point I'm trying to make is that we need to see more in Belfast and Assembly and those agencies that are charged with the distribution of inward investment to this jurisdiction. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Mooney. Councillor McDade.
Thank you, Chair. I'll keep it very brief, but I suppose I just wanted to make a comment on the fact about talked about ambition. Of course, we all have the ambition. I don't think there should be any ceiling on the ambition or what we want for our city and district. But I think there's a difference between wanting these things and wanting our city to thrive and actually saying it's thriving, because it's not thriving. Factually, that's incorrect. We're not. There's still the highest levels of poverty, still the highest levels of homelessness. I think that we just have to be very clear about our language. And I agree that that's what we want, and we want our city to be thriving, but I think we just need to be really clear that it's not actually thriving at the minute. And that's not us being negative, it's stating a fact. Thank you.
Okay, Councillor Harkin, you've already spoken, so I'm going to ask you to be very, very brief, or I'm going to cut you off.
Thank you for letting me in. I will be brief. Look, Councillor Jackson said that he attended the Chamber of Commerce meeting. I've never been to a Chamber of Commerce meeting. I've never been invited, but I was at a trade union meeting last week, and the discussion in that space is very different from what is going on in the Chamber of Commerce. And the Chamber of Commerce will not be the organisation that I take a lead from about what's happening in the city.
Okay, thank you. You did indicate that you had 2 issues under matters arising.
Thank you, Chair. It's GSP 164, and I had a series of questions in relation to the discussion about, sorry, the children's drawing there. Yeah, about the extended producer responsibility packaging levy. So have we received the money that we believed would be coming to the council? How much is it? And is there any update on whether or not there would be restrictions on our ability on how we could spend it? Because it's a significant amount of money that I believe is coming into the council. If that could be clarified, how much it is.
Yep, I can answer 2 of the 3 questions and give an approximate answer in the third. We have received the money. It's been reported in various previous reports, the quantum. The quantum, Karen, is now looking it up. But it's substantial, members. In terms of the restrictions, I represent all of the councils in discussions with DERA on pursuing what the restrictions are. There was a meeting yesterday which took place. So it's quite complicated, but essentially this money comes directly to councils across the UK and also here in Northern Ireland, directly from an organisation called PAC UK. And PAC UK sets out conditions for the use of the funding. And the conditions for the use of the funding are in terms of the efficient management and treatment of waste that council collects. And it sets out a number of conditions around that, but it's all related to waste and packaging waste in particular. We're in discussion with DERA. DERA have provided us with information that would suggest they maybe wish to go a little further in terms of the conditions attached to that money, and that formed the subject of the discussion yesterday. Under what basis, what legislation is DERA considering that? And I think the culmination of that meeting was that we're probably back in the space where the conditions of funding are as set out by PAC UK to councils. The funding is not guaranteed going forward. It is likely that there will be substantial money going forward, but the quantum isn't guaranteed. The scheme is in its very early days and requires to settle down over a period. And there is, and there are broader considerations in respect of whether this money is additional to the overall Northern Ireland budget, even though it's coming directly to councils. And DAERA officials have undertaken to go back and look at that. So the discussion remains live, but we have received the money. There have been update reports with regard to the disbursement of that money. Council has taken decisions through its rates estimates process in respect of the quantum of that money, and further reports will be coming back. And I think Karen has now got an update on the exact quantum.
Yeah, through you, Chair John, it's 5.32 million, with payments in November of 2.6, January of 1.32, and March of 1.32. Thank you.
To clarify, when I say we have received the money, we have received an absolute commitment to the money this year.
Have enough? Yep, okay. On further? No further matters are on this item or different items?
On that issue.
Go ahead.
Yeah. I'm trying to translate what I'm hearing, and it's almost as though DAERA are trying to cream off some of the funding. You know, they're saying, you know, well, there are areas of responsibility. It's a bit like the car parks, you know, where they are seeking or directing us to use the funding in a particular way rather than the suppliers of the funding doing so. Am I mistaken in that?
Through you, Chair, not explicitly, Alderman Hussey. The concern we had is that the PAC UK conditions are very broad, and a DAERA interpretation of those are maybe a little more specific. And we're trying to seek clarity on that.
It sounds as though they're trying to cover some of what are their actual responsibilities.
Okay. Members, no further matters arising. We're moving on to item number 8, member learning and development activities, and I assume that's you all, yeah?
Yep. Thank you, Chair. This report aims to provide you with information on the assessment of the effectiveness of last year's member development programme, to give you some information on the key milestones for the 25-26 year, to give you information on the updates to the programme for year 3, and to seek your consideration and approval of the member enrolment in the NILGA Leadership Programme for 2026. I would highlight in terms of the report the very positive feedback that is outlined at 3.14, and indeed the suggestions for improvement that were set out in terms of safeguarding. I would also highlight to members that the Year 3 programme has been updated to include the items identified at paragraph 3.3.1. In terms of the NILGA programme, as I said, details are provided in your pack in terms of the contents of that programme, and clearly there are 3-hour workshops, 1 per month. I think it's over 8 months. The recommendations, and in terms of that, the cost is estimated at the minute at £730 per participant. And if somebody wants to do any sort of accreditation, the CPD accreditation, there's an additional cost of £590. The recommendation in front of members this afternoon is that you note the updates provided and that you consider and approve participation of up to a maximum of 3 members to attend the NILGA programme for 2026. Thank you, Chair.
Alderman Hussey.
Sure, I welcome the leadership programme, and trust that, you know, that there will be colleagues from council who will put their names forward for that. Just a quick query. Given that this council contributes in excess of £59,000 per year to NILGA, and we've been told in the chamber that members of this chamber who sit on NILGA executives committee do get their expenses covered going away to wherever Nulga decides that they need to go. Are there any free places available to council on the leadership programme? Or do they all have to be paid for?
Through you, Chair, I'm aware that they're all being chargeable. Thank you.
Thank you, Alderman Hussey, for that. My memory is good enough to understand who you're trying to have a go at, and thank you very much for it, because I have to declare an interest as a member of the NULGA executive who is not participating in this leadership course at this stage, and who has never claimed expenses from this council or NULGA for my duties on NULGA. Members, I need a proposer and seconder for the report. Councillor McGinley. Alderman Hussey. Thank you. Item number 10. Ellen, I'm presuming is you again? Yeah, no, sorry, number 9.
Yep, through you, Chair. Again, this is report relates to the Royal Town Planning Institute planning event, which is about entitled Northern Ireland Politicians in Planning, which is taking place later this month. Spaces are, as I said, are quite limited, and bookings close on the 17th of October. The event itself is free, but obviously we will incur any mileage costs for members who are attending. And the recommendation in front of you today is that you approve attendance by interested members, with preference being given to planning committee members. And again, because of the timescales, we're requesting that any expressions of interest are forwarded to the Mayor and Member Services Officer by the 10th of October if members are so minded. Thank you.
Thank you, Ellen. And first indicated speaker is Councillor Annelis.
Apologies, it was on the last item, but it's okay.
Okay, thank you. Alderman Kerrigan.
Apologies, Chair, it was on the last item, so it's grand. You're a grand.
Okay. On this item, members, I need a proposer and seconder, Councillor Mooney and Councillor Leonard. Thank you both very much. Item number 10.
And through you, Chair, this is to advise members of correspondence received from the United Nations Association of Northern Ireland, seeking sort of recognition of the UN's 80th anniversary. It's highlighted in the report. That anniversary takes place on the 24th of October, and indeed the Council recognised the 75th anniversary in 2020 by illuminating Council buildings. The recommendation in front of members today is that members approve the illumination of the Council buildings at Strand Road, the Guildhall Clock and the Tinnies on the 24th of October. Thank you, members.
Members, there's a recommendation there. Councillor Mooney, proposing just?
Yeah.
Yeah. And need a seconder? Councillor McGinley, thank you. No further indicated speakers, members. Items number 11, 12 and 13 are for information, and I'm happy to take them as read unless any member wishes to comment on them. I'm going to give a wee minute for those online because this seems to be lagging a wee bit. No members online either. Can I get a proposer and seconder to go into confidential? Councillor Mooney and Councillor Leonard. Paul, please.